Good morning. This is Chair French, and I'm convening the business meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission for Thursday, December 28th, joined by my colleagues Commissioner Keene and Commissioner Keither. We have a lively agenda today. We've got 28 consent agenda items, and we've got 5 noticed items and one other item, which is really just a update on our business meeting schedule. So we will dive into our agenda items, and first we will look at our consent agenda. Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review all the items on the consent agenda. Let me ask you at this time whether you have any questions about those items, and I will begin with Commissioner Keither.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner Keene.
No questions for me either. Noting my recusal, pardon me, on consent agenda item number 1, I would move approval of the consent agenda.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, noting Commissioner Keene's recusal on item number 1. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move to our noticed items, which I have noted are rather heavy on natural gas issues and Winter Storm Uri implications. And we will dive right in with one of those to start. Our first noticed item is in docket number 23 KGSG 719 TAR, and this is a proposed order on unanimous settlement agreement. Our presenter for this item is Mr. Brian Fedotin. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Commissioners. On March 31st, Kansas Gas Service filed an application for approval of revisions to certain tariffs controlling its transportation service. On September 22nd, Kansas Gas Service, Commission staff, CURB, Atmos, Wood River, Symmetry, Kansas Municipal Gas Agency, Freedom Pipeline, Sunflower, and Constellation New Energy Gas Division all filed a joint motion to approve a settlement agreement in this docket. In essence, the settlement agreement revises the transportation tariff language, creates an event credit for transportation customers applicable during an operational flow order or period of curtailment of over deliveries with price spike event, requires transportation customers to either convert to sales service or install electronic flow measurement equipment by January 15th, 2027, adopts a new method for calculating how transportation customers are cashed out, and caps the penalty provisions applied during operational flow order or period of curtailment periods. In approving a settlement, the Commission must make an independent finding that the settlement is supported by substantial competent evidence and the record as a whole establishes just and reasonable rates and is in the public interest. Here, the signatories agree that the settlement agreement is supported by substantial competent evidence. In terms of rates, Justin Grady of staff explained that the settlement agreement does not actually change rates other than the EFM or electronic flow measurement charge, which under the settlement actually decreases. Grady also explains that the cap on penalties improves the justness and reasonableness of rates. And the order goes into more detail on both of these things, but in the interest of time, I'm jumping to the conclusions. Accordingly, the Commission, this order finds the settlement will result in just and reasonable charges for both Kansas Gas Service and its customers. Lastly, the signatories agree that the terms of the settlement agreement are in the public interest and should be approved by the Commission. And like I said, the order goes into more detail that I'm skipping over in this presentation. But after a careful review and consideration of the evidence in the record, this order finds that the settlement agreement is supported by substantial competent evidence, will result in just and reasonable rates, and is in the public interest. And therefore, the settlement agreement, which is attached to this order, is approved in its entirety. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fedotin. At this time, I will turn to my fellow commissioners to see if there are any questions, and I'll begin with Commissioner Keither.
No questions. A lot of pages to read about this item.
Absolutely. Commissioner Keen, any questions for Brian?
Second, Commissioner Keither's thought, and no, no questions for me. I would move approval of the order.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the order. Is there any further discussion on that motion? I would just add my 2 cents. I agree. There's a lot of pages, and even though we proceeded on a paper record here, I would say there's a lot of pages because it's a really consequential topic, and I would commend the parties. Winter Storm Uri, we're going on almost 3 years that have passed between now and that event, and the parties are still trying to look at their regulatory paradigm and the tariffs and improve those rules to try to achieve better outcomes and more equitable outcomes for all the stakeholders in the event that we see something like that again, which we hope we don't, but we know is possible. And so again, I would just commend the parties for coming together and coming up with maybe more flexible and more equitable tariffs for customers in the future. So with that, if there's no further discussion, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The order is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, commissioners.
We now move to our second noticed item. This is in docket number 24 SNKT 299 DRS, and this is a proposed order adopting staff's report and recommendation and setting interim rates. Our presenter for this item is Mr. David Cohen. Good morning, David.
Commissioners. On September 29, 2023, both Twin Valley Telephone Company and Southern Kansas Telephone Company Inc. filed identical applications requesting commission approval of a depreciation rate for fixed wireless equipment and towers. Neither asset class had previously been included in the commission's schedule of applicable depreciation rates in docket 94 GIMT 082 DRS, nor has the Federal Communications Commission determined an appropriate depreciation rate for these assets. On November 3rd, 2023, Commission staff filed an identical report and recommendation in both applications. Staff recommended a depreciation rate of 5% for towers and 14.28% for fixed wireless equipment. Staff points out that the current depreciation rates were set more than 25 years ago and recommends these rates be set on an interim basis until the Commission can evaluate a more complete and general investigation into depreciation rates. Staff reports companies do not object to these recommendations. The order adopts these recommendations and sets the rates on an interim basis as a general investigation will be opened shortly in a future docket.
Thanks, David. Let me ask one clarifying question before I turn to my fellow commissioners for questions. I do understand the order in this docket 24299 is identical to the order in our next noticed item 24300. Other than it being a separate docket and being a separate company. Would you like us to proceed on one motion to approve both orders, or would you like separate motions? Do you have a separate presentation for the next order?
No, it's really, I was just going to say everything that applies to because it was identical applications, it was identical reports and recommendations.
Okay.
The order actually has both headings on it, so it's
okay.
identical.
Well, then I would entertain a motion at the appropriate time to adopt the order in both dockets. But with that clarification, I will turn to my fellow commissioners for any questions. Commissioner Keither, do you have any questions?
No questions, but 25 years later, we probably ought to be looking at this. Good idea.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Keen.
No questions, but I would offer this comment very briefly. I commend the staff for this R&R. This report and recommendation has some thoroughness to it. It's highlighting issues that we need to have before us, and I commend the staff for that. As was the case, honestly, in the previous docket, the one having to do with Kansas Gas Service and those transportation service tariffs, the level of detail that we have is something that really, I think, embellishes the background we need to have and supports the result. And I think it serves a foundation from which we can really see that the level of detail is very helpful to us. So I don't think anybody's complaining about the level of detail from any of us, but I think we really do commend the fact that we have it. It's a blessing for us. With that longer than comment than I intended statement, I will move approval of the order of both orders. Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the order in both dockets, the 24-299 docket and the 24-300 docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The orders are approved. Thank you, David. It looks like we've got you for our next item. This is in docket number 24 KGSG 252 COM. And again, and then this is in a proposed order on the amended complaint. And again, our presenter is Mr. David Cohen.
Thank you. This one's a little longer. On September 13th, 2023, Pinebrook Condominium Subdivision Association Incorporated filed a complaint against Kansas Gas Service. In February of 2021, Winter Storm Uri caused significant increase in the cost of gas. At that time, Pinebrook was a transportation customer, meaning they did not buy their gas from Kansas Gas, but rather a third party named Symmetry. Pinebrook's February 2021 gas bill was significantly higher than normal, but has since been paid. In November of 2021, Pinebrook converted from being a transportation customer to a retail customer, meaning it began buying its gas from Kansas Gas Service directly. Pinebrook complained that it was being assessed a surcharge for the Uri costs, even though it was not a retail customer during Uri and did not cause KGS to incur any of these costs. Pinebrook requested that the commission enter an order determining that charging Pinebrook the Uri surcharge was unfair, unjust, and unduly discriminatory. On October 26, 2023, the commission determined that the complaint had not met its prima facie burden for action by the commission because the relief requested would violate the Utility Financing and Security Act, KSA 66-1242 and 1252. Pinebrook was granted 30 days to amend its complaint. On November 30th, 2023, Pinebrook amended its complaint. The amended complaint is very similar to the original complaint, but framed differently. The amended complaint rests on two arguments. First, that KGS made representations that Pinebrook would not be charged the Uri surcharge, and that KGS's Uri settlement agreement specifically excluded transportation customers from the surcharge. As to the first argument, the order finds that on its face, this is a tort claim seeking damages, and the proper forum for this is a civil court. The commission makes no finding as to the veracity of Pinebrook's claims. As to the second claim, the commission finds that the Uri surcharge does not apply to transportation customers, but began to apply to Pinebrook when they converted from transportation to retail customer. Under the terms of the financing order, the Uri surcharge applies to all retail customers, regardless of cost causation. The commission finds that under the terms of the Utility Financing and Security Act, the commission is precluded from determining that any action taken consistent with a financing order is unjust or unreasonable. And additionally, the commission is prohibited from reducing, altering, or impairing securitized utility tariff charges until the bond's been paid and performed in full. Therefore, the amended complaint fails to set out allegations that, if true, would establish a prima facie case for commission action. The commission finds the amended complaint has failed to meet its burden and is denied.
All right, thank you, David, for that comprehensive presentation. Let me ask at this time whether there are any questions by the commissioners. I will begin first with Commissioner Keither.
No questions, but again, just a comment that this beast has been bouncing around for a while, so it's time to move.
And Commissioner Keen.
Yes, thank you. Just very briefly, thank you for the overview, David. It was good. I'm just going to highlight the one aspect of it that I think is most compelling. The commission is required to follow the law and the statutes that are applicable to the commission. We have no powers of equity, no equitable powers. So we can't look beyond damages. We have restrictions even on issues such as that. We don't oversee tort issues. So only appropriate courts having jurisdiction over these equitable and tort issues are able to really consider the issues that are presented in this particular instance, by the complainant. For that reason, I believe that the order, as you've described it, is the appropriate order. Having said that, I would move approval of the order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the order. Let me ask at this time if there is any further discussion on the motion. I guess, again, I will, since I second everything Commissioner Keen just said. Our denial of the complaint at this time, I don't think it should be construed as any lack of sympathy for the situation Pine Brook may find itself in, assuming all of the allegations are correct. This is simply a matter of this not being the proper forum and our inability to provide the requested relief under Kansas law. So I hope that is clear. I certainly think the order makes that very clear and speaks for itself. So with that, we have a motion and a second to approve the order. All in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no. The order is approved. Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
We now move to our final noticed order today. This is in docket number 23 EKCE 846 TAR. And this is another order addressing the gas markets and a response to volatility in those markets. And it's a proposed order approving a forward natural gas and power hedging policy for Evergy. And our presenter for this item is Ms. Carly Massentine. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning, and thank you. Yes, in this docket, Evergy is requesting permission to establish and implement a forward natural gas and power hedging program. The conversations regarding the need for this program, as you suggested, Chair French, came out of Winter Storm Uri and the price volatility experienced there and through other winter or weather-related events in 2021 and 2022. Staff, CURB, and Evergy have had several discussions about what a hedge program for an electric utility, and specifically for Evergy, should look like in Kansas. Again, the goal of this program is to reduce the volatility of fuel prices used to serve retail load. Staff filed its report and recommendation in this docket on November 9th, in which staff determined that the resulting application and hedge program from Evergy is well designed and has appropriate safeguards in place to protect retail customers. Staff has also recommended a communications plan for the first 3 years of the program's existence, which would require notification from Evergy when any hedge activity takes place, and also requires continued meetings amongst the parties. At the close of that 3-year period, parties shall inform the Commission as to what a continued communications plan will look like if one is determined to be necessary. So with that, staff would recommend approval of this hedging program subject to the conditions and communication plan as set forth in staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Let me ask at this time if there are any questions about the proposed order, and I will begin with Commissioner Keither.
No, but I think it makes sense going forward.
Good. Commissioner Keen.
Very brief comment from me again. The nexus here, I think, can be pretty clearly drawn back to Winter Storm Uri. Concerns about preventing a recurrence of some of the events that occurred in conjunction with that event. What I really think is strong about the policy is that it provides for ongoing communications among the parties, and that it sets forth certain conditions, which I think are all important to again, hopefully protect the short and long run best interests of ratepayers. Having said that, I would move approval of the order.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the proposed order in this docket. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I'll just add, I completely agree with Commissioner Keen's observations there, and again, commend the parties for being proactive and trying to address this issue, which, we know coordination of the gas electric system is not going to be completely solved by any policy we take or approve here under our jurisdiction. But I think this and the first docket we spoke of today are good examples of our utilities, our staff, and our stakeholders coming together and trying to do what we can, the steps we can take to insulate consumers as much as possible from that volatility. So I do support the order as well. So we've got a motion and a second to approve. Those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no. The order is approved. Thank you, Ms. Mazantine.
Thank you.
All right, we have come to the conclusion of our noticed items. We do have one final note here on our agenda, and that is just an announcement that there will not be a business meeting next Tuesday, January 2nd, coming right after the new year. But we will have a meeting the following Thursday. And also a note that we will approve a new annual calendar for the 2024 KCC business meetings at our January 11th, 2024 organizational meeting. So we are now at the end of our agenda. If there's no further business to come before us this morning, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Wishing everybody a happy new year. I would second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to adjourn and some happy thoughts for the new year. All in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.